Shabbat Shalom. So there was a new rabbi in town, and it was his very first Shabbat service that he was helping to lead. And sure enough, he's up on the beam. It's the middle of the Torah service, and he gets word that the next Aliyah is a big anniversary Aliyah. Well, the new rabbi's excited. He gets to bless this couple for their anniversary. So sure enough, the husband and wife come up on the beam, and the rabbi says, "Please tell me, which anniversary is this?" And the husband looks to the young rabbi and says, "Well, my wife and I, we've been married 36 good years." And the rabbi says, "Great, I got it." And as he turns to run to the microphone to announce this anniversary, the wife grabs him by the elbow and says, "Rabbi, we've been married 50 years. But my husband's right. We've been married 36 good years." How do you measure a year? Here we are nearing the end of 2025. Was it a good year? Was it a bad year? If you are into politics and you lean to the left, you might say one thing. If you're into politics and you lean to the right, you might say something else. As Jews, how do we look upon 2025 with the incredible rise of anti-Semitism? And we might also do well to remember that despite that, most Jews throughout history would change spots with us in a heartbeat. Most Jews throughout history would change spots with us in a heartbeat. What do we think about 2025 as we see it through the lens of our pro-Israel eyes? Was 2025 a good year for Israel or a bad year for Israel? There's a ceasefire-ish, and there was war. Israel is strategically in a far better position than it's been in recent memory and perhaps ever vis-a-vis her neighbors. And Israel is incredibly isolated on the political front. How about for you personally? Was 2025 a good year or a bad year? Perhaps you lost a loved one. And perhaps you are thinking about how blessed you were to have that loved one in your life. Perhaps you confronted an illness. And perhaps you're remembering how grateful you are to simply wake up every morning. How do you measure a year? 30 years ago, the musical Rent came out, which asked this very same question. How do you measure a year in the life? Some of you are smiling, you know the words. In daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in inches, in miles, in laughter, in strife. How do you measure a year in the life? We're confronted with that question as we turn to our Torah portion this week, Parashat Vayigash. And I'll invite you, if you want, to turn with me in your Eitz Chaim Chumashim. I'm on page 285. And here we are in chapter 47. And as you know well, because of Joseph's success, Joseph being now second in command over all of Egypt, Joseph helping Egypt to prepare for the famine that it now finds itself in, Joseph is able to secure passage for his father and his brothers from the land of Israel, where the famine was severe, into Egypt, where they had prepared for it. And Joseph even has the opportunity to bring his dad to work with him and to introduce Jacob to Pharaoh. And here we see the encounter. I'm on verse 7, chapter 47, page 285. Joseph then brought his father Jacob and presented him to Pharaoh. Jacob greeted Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked Jacob, "How many are the years of your life?" Now, it's a funny question, and how you read the question determines how you understand the question being asked. Because most people, when they meet someone for the first time, don't say, "Oh, nice to meet you. How old are you?" Certainly in polite company, it's not generally our first question we ask of a new acquaintance. As I read this, I imagine Pharaoh looking at Jacob and saying, "Good God, this man is old." And in fact, the Midrash agrees and says that in Egypt, very few people lived to a ripe old age. Our experience as Jews, especially at this point, as Israelites, was that a lot of people lived to a ripe old age, but it wasn't so in Egypt. And so Pharaoh looks to Jacob and says, "Good God, how old are you?" And Jacob answered Pharaoh, "The years of my sojourn on earth are 130. Few and hard have been the years of my life, nor do they come up to the lifespans of my fathers during their sojourns." Jacob answers the question in two different ways. He gives the direct answer, "The years of my sojourn are 130. Pharaoh asked him how old he is. Jacob answered the question. But then Jacob adds, "Few and hard have been the years of my life, nor do they come up to the lifespans of my fathers during their sojourns." And Rashi looks at the text of these verses and says what Jacob is referring to specifically is the fact that he was never able to settle down, that Jacob was constantly journeying from one place to another. And we know the life of Jacob, and as you look at it, was it a good life or was it a hard life? He had to obtain, we'll say, the birthright from his older brother and had to resort to less than ideal ways to obtain it. Then he got chased out of the promised land because of it. Then he fell in love. And then on his wedding night, his father-in-law switched out brides. Ultimately, Jacob was married 4 times. And I'll let you decide whether that was a blessing or a curse. Jacob is swindled by his father-in-law, and at the same time, when he finally leaves his father-in-law's house, Jacob is rich beyond belief. And Jacob finally makes it back to the promised land with all of his children. And there he's encountered by his older brother, and they make peace with each other. Jacob finally settles down in the land of Israel, only to have his favorite child taken away. Jacob thinks he's dead. But now Jacob gets to re-encounter that child, now a grown man, second in command over all of Egypt. How do you measure a life? 130 years, Jacob says, but they were hard years. And I didn't get to live as good as my father and my grandfather lived before me. Now, if we take a look at Jacob's life and we juxtapose it in this week's Torah portion to Joseph's life. Now, on one hand, Jacob is 130 years old, and Joseph is a middle-aged man at the zenith of his career. And earlier in our Torah portion, what do we come to see about Joseph? He reunites with his brothers. And rather than holding a grudge against them, Joseph sees that his brothers have changed and matured, and so Joseph forgives. And more than just forgiving, Joseph actually says, "You know what? I'm not going to hold a grudge against you, because I see that all of the tsuris in my life," Joseph says, all of the tsuris in my life was all building towards something. God put me here for a specific reason. Now think about the difference in perspective, right? Jacob says, "My years have been few and hard, difficult, maybe even terrible." He looks at all of his tsuris and he measures all of it to say that my life has been a hard life. Joseph, on the other hand, looks at his life and says, "You know what? All of these hardships have built me toward this moment." And I come to wonder if Joseph sees his life in a different way because of what he is able to do at that time. What is Joseph's life? Sure, it's professional success, but that's not where Joseph's focus is. Joseph realizes that his life is blessed because he gets to make peace with his family, because he gets to provide for those who are in need, and because he's got incredible faith in God. Joseph looks at his life and says, I have everything. I have faith, I have family, and I have the ability and the will to care for those who are in need. Joseph looks at the years of his life and says, despite the tsuris, or maybe because of the tsuris, look how blessed I am. And we see in this week's Torah portion, Vayigash, two different ways of looking at life. Focusing on the hardships or focusing on the blessings. Now, Judaism gives us an opportunity in a different way than Joseph and Jacob, because our Judaism gives us opportunity every day to look at our lives and express words of gratitude for the blessings. Judaism gives us Shabbos and holidays to be able to reflect and to celebrate. Judaism gives us the gift so that we don't have to wait until the very end to look back on our lives and judge, was it good or was it bad? We have that opportunity every day. And because we have that opportunity, we have the choice of how to change our lives for the better every day and every week and every year. So I might invite you, as you look back now on 2025, how do you measure a year? In Shabbos and holidays celebrated? In time with beloved family and friends? In the money you've given to tzedakah? In the hours you've volunteered to care for those who are in need? In how you treat each and every person? How do you measure a year in the life? Sure, you could say it's been 525,600 minutes. Yeah, 525,600 minutes. Or you could say it's been a year of faith. It's been a year of family and of friendship. It's been a year of giving and of caring. It's been a year of love. This Shabbat, as we near the end of 2025, may we choose to see the opportunities in our life, and may we act on those blessings and give thanks for them. Shabbat Shalom.